Good morning, LBC Radio. This is Corey Rosen with the Story Podcast today. Today I have on a special guest, but before we get into that, I have some merchandise for sale. We have these really cool stickers with the logo on it, and we also have some awesome hoodies coming out with the logo on the front and the first 50 guests on the back. So if you really support what I do and would like to support and help me expand the business, be sure to message me on Facebook or Instagram and see if you want to get a hoodie. Today, I have on a really cool dude. His name is DJ Mast. DJ Mast Productions is a Central PA DJ and lighting production company local to the Lancaster, PA region. They are about you and your event. DJ Mast Productions is focused on emphasizing our clients through creating custom DJ MC services, lighting, and visual effects for each event, making lifelong impressions for their clients and their guests. Specializing in professional entertainment that facilitates relationship, quality social atmospheres, and high-end dance party experiences. They deliver professionalism and organization while bringing passion, energy, and genuine respect for their clients and guests in each performance. Make your event memories vivid through DJ Mast Productions. You can find them on Facebook.com/DJ Mast Productions, on Instagram, DJ Mast Productions as well, or you can go to their website, which is, guess what? DJMast.com.
And if you type in DJ Mast Productions, that one's gotten it as well.
That's what I thought it was going to be.
It is DJMast.com, but if you type, I have both websites, but it's easier to tell people DJMast.com than telling them to type in Productions as well.
Well, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Corey. Thanks for having me, man. Listening through that, I'm like, I should have just given you an elevator pitch because I'm over here just staring.
Well, so what got you inspired to go into DJing? Was it a DJ that you grew up listening to? Was it some albums? Or was it just going to a wedding and being like, this is a really awesome time? What was it?
So, well, I was a drummer in a touring band prior to college. I went to Penn State. Graduated from Penn State, but while I was at Penn State, I started picking up DJing. I quit the band. The band members were not trying to go full-time with things in the same way that I was looking to do it, and effort-wise, the amount of time away from home and all that. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, it's my next step, and at the time, I was graduating high school, and then in between high school and deciding, all right, this is it's either college or it's band for me. It wasn't the band, and so I started going to Penn State Berks, which is, satellite campus, was commuting there, and then I went to Penn State, Maine for the last 2 years, and my junior, senior year started just having more of an interest in electronic music, and just having fun with it, and so I was just doing friends' parties and stuff like that, but I actually really cared about the music that was being played, the crowd itself, and how the crowd was reacting. I've always been somebody who likes to bring people together. And so music and dancing bring people together in a way that pretty much no other experience does. And so that was like an interest of mine. And I was chatting with another, there was a spot called Kildare's up in State College. And they wanted to do, and Kildare's is in like Manayunk and Westchester as well. And they have another location, I forget where that one's at. But they really do the whole Irish pub thing during the day, and then they want to have a club during the night. And so they wanted to do that in State College. They had another DJ. I had gone in for some wings with my friends the one night and saw the DJ, and I was like, I should just chat with the manager and see if I can fit in somewhere. So I was like, hey, if you have any available time, if this guy calls off, if he needs a vacation or whatever, I'll give you a free day to preview, see how things go. And longer story short, essentially they ended up calling me back in and said, hey, we want you 3 nights a week. So that gave me, I ended up replacing the other DJ. That gave me a residency at Kildare's in State College. And so I was there every weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, while I'm doing a full student schedule as well. And I was taking a bunch of credits as well, but it was perfect. It was awesome. And it gave me a ton of experience right off the bat too.
So what is a lot of the learning curve to DJing? Exactly what goes into making a good DJ?
Making a good DJ does depend on the industry that you're actually looking
Right.
at. So wedding DJs, special event DJs, if you will, and producer DJs, and then club DJs, you're really talking about, I would say more producer DJs and club DJs can have a similar personality, if you will, because you're hired more so for the music specifically. But like club DJs, if you don't have an MC, you've got to get the energy out to the crowd. And so you can't just be quiet on the microphone, and you can't be off the mic the entire time, because sometimes it takes encouragement to get people on the dance floor or to direct people. And then to a higher degree, that whole like personability and what you're capable of doing over the microphone is also then more important for special event DJs, because you're really facilitating the event. You're emceeing not just the energy for the group dancing. You're not just showing up for the dance party and just throwing a party. You're also doing introductions. You're doing all the special events throughout the reception. You're letting people know where restrooms are, what to expect next, what to do, and creating expectations for crowds is literally pretty much the best thing that you can do to create a successful event. Creating those expectations are really where if you don't do that ahead of time, crowds can become sort of their own. They'll just look out for their own interests. I kind of say, like, sometimes guests are selfish, right? Like, they're just like, hey, I'm here at this wedding. Like, what's going on? I have no idea what's going on. Okay, let's go and check this out. Let's walk the grounds. Let's go to the bar. Right. But if there's going to be something that's there and about to happen, you don't want the crowd starting to get up, walking around when there's about to be maybe a special dance or cake cutting or something like that during a wedding.
Yeah, doing the wedding DJ, I didn't realize how instrumental the DJ is to the entire wedding process. So you're pretty much the director of the wedding at that point, because you are the person with the microphone, and you're like, okay, there's cocktail hour, and then we'll be up for dinner at this time. So if you want to go to there, if there's bathrooms over here. By the way, that was the cake cutting. That was the introductions. It really shocked me how in control of the wedding the DJ has to be in order for it to be like a successful, decent wedding. Not only just the music, but just the entire wedding as a process.
Yeah. The musical side of things is, to me, sort of like a standard, right? So, as a producer DJ, you're going to spend more time in your studio creating music, and then you would go out and you would DJ your sets. You might incorporate other tracks if you don't have an entire, library of your own tracks that you can play. But then for your club DJs, again, mixing seamlessly, giving a good energy growth throughout the night. Reading the crowd and understanding the crowd too, how they're interacting. For me as an event DJ, I get to see that crowd a little early on. So I get to see how they're interacting during cocktail hour, how they're interacting during the mealtime. So I can see, what's the general decibel level of conversation. I'm not actually out there with a decibel reader, but like how loud are they talking? How energetic are they? Are they intermingling between tables? And stuff like that. So I can see how cohesive that crowd is. When you're at a club, and if you've been at that club for a little while, you start to understand in a deeper way the actual clientele that club is bringing in, or the restaurant, or whatever you're doing. And so once you start to understand the people that they want to be there, then you also know what kind of music to play and also how to treat that crowd. Because if you play the wrong music, then a different crowd's going to show up.
That's right.
So you have to cater that. So everybody has their own unique preferences. Special events, they have their own preferences between, say, it's a bride and groom or a corporate client. They have a vision. When it comes to actual clubs and stuff like that, you have a type of clientele that they want to bring in. Restaurants are even a little bit more, honed in because they have people who want to eat their type of food. And so you want to bring those people in. And then if you're going to turn a restaurant into a club, you have to get that transition happening.
So what is it like to have to mix songs? Do you have to beat match? What does that mean? Do you have to manipulate different songs? Do you like to use effects on your songs or like that kind of stuff? Because some people might say, like, at the high school dance, the DJ is pretty much there just playing one song after another, without much of interaction. What is it like to be a professional DJ, to keep the crowd going, to interact with the crowd?
So, being a professional DJ, interacting with the crowd, and when you're talking about, how do you transition the music? It really depends on the outgoing track and the incoming track and how I choose to mix that. Choosing natural transition points in the song is also something that's like super helpful to give really a truly natural feel to the transition without playing the start to the end of the song. Some songs might warrant it, especially at a special event where the entire crowd specifically might be singing out the entire song. You might play that for a classic or something like that. But normally I'm actually going from one song to the next seamlessly where there's no real transition between that you can typically hear or that you're immediately recognizing. It's to take that energy and to continue it directly into the next song. So bringing in a snippet. So whether I'm like looping something in, whether I'm drumming it in with a pad, so I like actually have a certain beat in the song that I actually want to drum in along with the previous song. You can match tempo that way and bring in something that's just a few BPM off or a few percentage off in general BPM. But normally, yeah, if I'm trying to bring that energy growth, the BPM also matters with the energy. And so usually I'm moving. It's a slow wave of BPM change, but it could be quicker changes of songs.
Gotcha.
So I'll, if one song's ready, if the crowd's ready for one song to move out, if it's overly repetitive or whatever it is, I'll play, the heavy hitting portion of that song, but I don't want to overplay that song. And then, I'll transition out of that. But if somebody comes up and says, hey, I want something that's like, say I'm playing, 128 BPM at the higher energy of the point of the night, more newer stuff is, in that realm, especially remix stuff. And they want something that's like 100 BPM. If it were something down in, 64 BPM, that's literally a half time signature, so it already matches. You're just not getting as many hits in there, but you can easily make that happen. And so that 100 BPM would be a totally different vibe. 100, 105, and that's where a lot of like Latin music falls in too. And so, yeah, so just kind of recognizing where those BPMs are. My software analyzes that. Even iTunes analyzes the BPM of the track once you've listened to it once. And so you can kind of organize things. Okay, this is what I'm looking at that the client had requested. So if the client had a specific, set of music that they wanted requested, I ask for specific songs for group dancing. I ask for genres they like to dance to, genres they want to avoid, and songs that might be in the genres they want, like songs specifically in the genres they want that they don't want played. Whether they've, heard it overplayed, whether they have another specific reason not to play that song, those are there. And so then I'll take those and I'll place those into my own categories to help me understand immediately in each group or each playlist or each crate for DJ applications. I put those in based on like classics, millennial classics, what I would consider if I were straight at a club, like what would be my starter level of energy, then build, and then the high energy. Some brides and grooms don't get into what I would consider like the high energy level, right. Where you could get into some harder dance stuff and things like that, where the remixes are much heavier, depending on the crowd. They're into it. Depending on the crowd, they're not into it. And so, a lot of them will get up into the poppy remix stuff. Millennial remixes, millennial stuff is what I'm calling millennial classics. I kind of categorize anything like millennial classics are like from like the early 2000s, maybe late 90s, so early, to the mid 2008, 9 up to 2010-ish. But then pretty much from 2010 and a little earlier till 2015, I consider like millennial newer classics.
Gotcha.
And that's just because there was a lot of music that came out in that time, and it's been so integral in like the club scene. And so, even the newer club scene is still seeing like a resurgence of those millennial classics, if you will.
It's really funny. I've seen so many memes of like millennials when they were at the clubs. Oh, this is my jam, and now that they're in like their 30s at the grocery store, oh, these are my jams. And then it slowly, as they grow older and older, they're getting to more older people places. And like, oh, this is my jam. They're playing my jam.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, people are wanting to hear that stuff now, and it just depends on the crowd and the new stuff that's coming out too. Some of it's more singable for those who are listening to it. It's a little less danceable. So yes, you can jump up and down to it, but screaming out and jumping up and down to a single song or, a series of songs can get a little old. So you kind of want that stuff to flow more. And the Millennial Classics have kind of brought that back to it.
Yeah, so you mentioned remixes. Do you make your own remixes, or is that something you're interested in? Is that something that you just kind of leave to other people and just take a part of?
So when I had started, it was an interest. Like I thought, producer DJ, and I wasn't sure where all of the energy went for a DJ. So what do I put my energy into? So for me specifically, because I do special events, and with how busy I am with special events, there's so much that I'm putting into performing those events, handling the clients, making the playlist per client, because every single one is different. I never use the same playlist for any given client. And so the amount of time that I put into that is already I'm well over full-time hours. I'm usually doing, I'd say 45 to 56 hours Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then I still have to do all the admin stuff and run the business Monday through Thursday. So putting my time and effort into, I can't produce enough music to do the remixes myself. I could do, say, one remix a month or something like that if I had wanted to put the time into it. But then I'm really only producing one track at most a month. And in this case, what I do is any given track, there's, say, 100 different remixes for.
Oh, yeah.
I choose my preference in what I feel is the most danceable versions that other DJs, other producer DJs have done. And so with the record pools that I'm a part of as a DJ, they have some in-house DJs, and then you also have other DJs that just submit tracks to these record pools. And so the remixes are going to, it's really, it's also how you mix. It's an art form. So the remixes are going to sound the way the DJ wants, the specific DJ wants their song to sound. And some specific DJs, they make music for their specific area. And it's going to have that vibe to it. And it might not apply to another area. So for me, I've just been, part of my skill, my natural skill, is being able to hear music that the general public really likes. And so the remixes I choose will typically hit harder than the remixes, than some of the other remixes that are available for that song. So I spend my time going down through. I'll look at the top charts. I'll get those songs, the originals, just in case somebody wants the original. But then I'll go down through all the different variations of those remixes, and I'll listen to like 15 seconds in, 30 seconds in, 45 seconds in. If it doesn't catch me when I'm jumping into that song, I go right to the next because I've got other remixes to go through. If I don't like that song somewhere in there, because I'm going to hit it in all really, in the start, I'm going to hit it in the middle, I'm going to hit it like somewhere a little further in the middle of the song. So I'm really going to hear what the remix is feeling, and if it catches my ear, then I'll listen to more of it. But if I'm just like, nope, that's not going to work at all, like I don't like that vibe, it's either too strong or it's just too disruptive for the actual song. So remixes of songs, you can go a whole different direction than the original song went. But a lot of times, at least in America, people like to recognize the music they're listening to and dancing to. Not in all areas, but in the special event world, they want to know the songs that they're hearing. So still being able to recognize the original song and and how it musically continues. So even the remixes, like if it incorporates something or sort of natural with the original track, instead of completely just taking like an a cappella track and then doing their own electronic music to it. So it's taking those songs and it's just finding out which one to me sounds the best. And I've honestly been blessed with that because from the very beginning, that was what sort of set me aside or apart from a lot of the other DJs. One, it was the care of the client, focusing the music on what the client wants. And then two, taking that focus and finding songs that the crowd that they're going to have really wants.
How do you determine what's danceable? What is danceable? Because that's I imagine that's very subjective.
It is subjective, and like I was saying, with the different crowds you're playing for and the different areas you might be coming from, like Baltimore has like they're kind of like they have like a beat to their stuff, and it's like a faster like drum beat, and it's an underlying like do 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 do. You know, don't make me sing this stuff.
Right.
But yeah. So it's like, you know, if that's underneath of it. And the song, it's just like adding too much energy. I say too much energy. It's just disruptive. So where it
Chaotic.
could, yeah, exactly. Like you could have, and then it's hard to throw the vocals in there, but then it ends up doing this like breakbeat type thing down in there too. And so then you have the original song that you're recognizing, and then it goes into its own portion of the song. Like, oh, this is my electronic section of the song, where the original part of the song, or like the song that I'm remixing into, it doesn't even fit in here, so I'm going to do my own thing. Well, if that doesn't match, you know, the original part of the song, to me, it's pretty disruptive for our general area. And so I usually don't play that stuff unless it's like a Jersey or a Baltimore crowd, you know what I mean? Because they're looking for that kind of thing in some cases. And so songs like that, you know, usually for me, it's stuff that, like I mentioned, brings in certain melodies and things like that, but changes those melodies, whether it be pitch, whether it be tempo, whether it just be breaking up the melody, or even using snippets of that melody and creating a new beat with the melody, because it then keeps the same sounds. And that's not all the songs that I'll do. Some of them are more energetic and stuff like that too, but I try not to break it up too much.
So, what made you decide to create your own business, and how does one create your own business with throughout DJing?
So I had an interest to start a business or to actually run a business ever since I decided to go to college. And so I was going first for kinesiology because I was working out after high school and stuff like that. I'm a pretty skinny dude. If you're watching the video, don't even worry. I haven't worked out in years. I lift plenty of speakers over the weekends, and that's enough to keep me like smaller. So yeah, as far as deciding, I did have an interest myself to run a business or to own a business. And then when I graduated, I have a bachelor's of science in business marketing with a minor in labor studies and employee relations, which was to focus on, you know, labor law. It also, you know, it's kind of like a labor law minor, if you will. I could have gone into a labor law major with starting that minor if I wanted to put a couple more years in. But that just gave me really the focus on how do you be a good employer? How do you handle employees? How do you handle a business? What's a general, what are good business practices, really? And so the business marketing side of things, that is on the statistics side of things. You're also looking into with the statistics, you're looking at demographics, you're understanding demographics, and that helps me as a DJ too, understanding who I'm DJing crowd-wise for, the type of music they're going to want. So it's the client, and then it's also, after I've seen what the client wants, I look at their crowd and I decide in my head, like, is this going to work for the crowd? I still work their stuff in how I need to, but then all of the other areas that I fill in, I'm, you know, filling that in for the crowd, because usually a bride and groom or a corporate client, if they want to have a dance party, they want the crowd to be on the dance floor. You know what I mean?
Right.
They want an active dance crowd. And so you do that by reading the crowd. And so, yeah, so I wanted to start a business. I was thinking I was going to maybe run somebody else's business, manage it, and let them kind of take a step back as an owner. And then I would be, you know, maybe working my way up to some level of ownership and stuff like that. Well, I started DJing in college. In order to pay things off a little quicker, bill-wise, you know, with college, I paid for it all myself, except for one semester that my parents paid for. And so I was just trying to work hard for just paying those bills off. So I had done construction prior to college. I did construction through college in the summers. And then during, you know, the actual school year, my junior and senior year, I started DJing. And it was decent money for what I was doing. And so then I was considering actually staying in State College and just DJing clubs the whole time in State College, full time. But their summer budgets just die. So when a college leaves, especially a college that has 45,000 students in a town, you have 45, you know, there's a handful that stick around for maybe summer classes, internships, or something like that. But the majority of those students are either going back home or going to other areas of the world. So yeah.
For those who don't know, State College is actually a town.
It is a town, yeah.
Not just a college, it's a town. That's why people, I've always heard I'm from State College, and I'm like, well, what does that mean?
Yep.
But it's a town. It's an actual town here in PA.
So Penn State University, University Park, main campus is in State College.
Right. It's very confusing, just as every college should be.
Yeah. So so the budget didn't work out for like a full-time thing. And so I came back and I was working construction following college while I was DJing on the weekends. And I actually did not necessarily expect DJing to go full-time. It was good money on the weekends, and I was putting all of my effort into it, like, because I love what I do, and I have a passion for it. And so I just kept putting what I had into it. I kept reinvesting in the company myself financially. As I would make money, I would continue to grow the business, add more offerings and things like that. Well, I was working another job, and my wife and I, like, specifically, we were ready to move away from that job, and the positions there didn't provide the type of management that I had wanted. And so the push kind of came from that job, and I was like, when is the first that I can, like, get out of that and just make it full-time DJing? And so I just went until I knew that financially that year we had, the bills paid, and I knew from futures contracts, because I do special events, things are booked ahead of time. So I have stuff a year, 2 years in advance. And so I knew based on the futures contracts that I had, I was able to pay off the bills that I had. And I knew based on statistics that I was going to grow at a certain percentage that year. And like previous years, I would base that off of pre-year bookings. So for instance, we're in 22. What I would gauge going off of 2020 to 2021 and comparing previous years to each other, what was the year's growth of pre-year bookings? So what did I have booked for 2022 and 2021 already, and compare that to the previous year? Is it higher than the previous year? And I had a consistent growth. 2020 threw a wrench in things, so right. we won't even talk about COVID. But yeah, that year actually ended up being just fine as well. But there was a lot of challenges along with it. But we're out of that, and we're moving pretty well into an open event market, which is like awesome. And the year has been incredibly busy, and just keeping diligent about, I'm a clean person as well. So like keeping myself, if anybody's sick, keeping myself distance and safe, and, wearing masks if I feel like I need to, whatever. But that's just, yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that you didn't really expect, or maybe that you would want other people to be aware of when you create your own business? I'm sure there's a lot of legal stuff you have to get in order. So like, are you an LLC or? Yeah,
we're an LLC. We're considering going to an S corp just for tax filing purposes. But an LLC separates you legally, personally from your business, and so that they call it a corporate veil, if you will. And so deciding your business and how you want to file your business is, dependent on how much money you expect to make with that business, because, an LLC is good for a portion of time. And then if you're in an S corp, there's better tax, capabilities. You're not double paying your employment tax or you're not paying as much of your employment tax, because you can write yourself a certain salary, if you will, and then you can pay yourself your dividends at the end of the year. So once you're consistent and you can pay yourself a salary and live off the salary you're paying yourself, then you can take those extra bonuses at the end of the year, and you're not taxed on those, but you're taxed on what you pay yourself salary-wise,
Gotcha.
Employment tax-wise. And then your business still pays the taxes too. So expect a 30% tax rate.
How much?
33.
How much does it cost in order to set up an LLC?
So an LLC, you're going to pay a little bit more for an LLC if you're paying somebody to do it. You can also go on LegalZoom. This is not a plug for LegalZoom. I did not do that.
This is not legal advice, by the way.
Yes, this is not legal advice whatsoever. It's what I did. I did pay a lawyer to do mine. And so you're looking somewhere in the $600 range to get a lawyer to create you an LLC. Some might be a little more, some might be a little less, depending on who you find, but that, at least this was years back, so it might be more now.
Right.
So that's just to create the LLC, and that is, if you want to start a sole proprietorship, you can do that. It just depends on the amount of risk your business has. So if you're having conversations with people like we are right now in the studio,
risk isn't that big.
Yeah, the chances of one of these microphones taking somebody out is pretty low. Falling off the chair, there's a possibility there, but going after you individually, there's your risk is remediated to a decent degree. If you're creating some type of art for somebody, your art is not really a risk to anybody. If they hang it poorly, it's
on them.
It's on them. If you designed the frame and the frame fell off the wall, then that could be on you. So just depending on your business, sole proprietorship is very simple. And an LLC is honestly very simple as well when it comes to taxes. But a sole proprietorship is by far the easiest way to do taxes. And then getting into the S Corp, if you're an organized person, you can easily do that too. Like for me, it won't change anything that I'm doing filing on the back end. I actually use my own spreadsheet. I don't use QuickBooks. I don't use MileIQ. Everything, because I'm just an organized person, I find it actually more customizable and perfect for what I want to do to create my own spreadsheet.
That's good. At what point did you realize that you needed to create a sole proprietorship? Because I know the IRS will get you no matter what. But it's hard to know at what point you need to create a business entity per se.
So for me, I have always wanted to do things as legal and by the books as possible. That's kind of who I am too as a person, but I also want to do things that financially benefit me the best that I can. So that's why considering to switch to the S Corp, at least filing as an S Corp going into next year. As far as what you would choose to do and when you would choose to do it, there's usually some understanding. Businesses take time to start, and they take effort, they take money, they take owner. Typically they take owner input. Your initial investments in that, and so during that time, there's understanding from the business, but you can also backfile. So you can wait until the business is actually going to work. So okay, I'm going to put some money into this. I'm going to do some things. You start to make some revenue and you're like, okay, the revenue's coming in. Start your business then. I mean, if sole proprietorship, you can start that so simply. You can file yourself so simply with that. It's under your own name, under your own social security number. It's only once you create an LLC that you have an EIN, which is like a tax number.
Okay.
And that's to separate the owner's social security numbers from the business's tax numbers. I still incorporate that. Yeah. However you file that with the government, your accountant, or if you're doing your own research, you'll know how to file, your estimates and stuff like that. I pay quarterly estimates, you know what I mean? And so I'm paying out taxes 4 times a year. Some people are paying, every paycheck. If you're an employee, you're paying every paycheck. And that's, again, still an estimate, but those are usually created at a high level of estimate. And so you're paying in typically more than you needed to pay in. And then by the time you get your write-offs and all of that, as an employee, and if you have children and all of that with your deductibles, then usually you get a tax return. But it's your money. It's your money you're getting back. And so as a business, you typically would pay in less. So it's called like safe harboring for an LLC. You pay based off of what your income was last year, and that's legal. So if you expect to grow a lot, maybe you want to start paying higher estimates than what your estimates would have been for last year at an exact amount, so that you don't have to pay in too much at the end of the year right before the next tax season starts. So for instance, for me, at like tax season, I don't know what it is, April 15th.
It's
April,
yes. Yeah.
They moved
I think it's April 15th.
They moved it this year for whatever reasons. I think it was because of the weekend and stuff like that. Yeah. So if you're paying in at that point, you're like, okay, I still owe the government money after my estimates. Well, then you have your first quarterly estimates coming in within like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that. So then you're paying what you owe the government, and then you're paying that. So you just have to budget for it. And smaller businesses, that's where it's more challenging. Budgeting your money to pay your taxes. You think you have all that money in your account. And if you think about 33%, in general, 1/3 of your income goes to taxes. That's quite a bit of money. And you can leave that in your bank account and think you have it, but it's really the government's if you have yet to pay that. And so just understanding that, I've always been a financial person. Personally, I considered going into either accounting or finance. And so I took a few classes like that, but it was an interest, but it's not a passion.
So do you do all your budgeting for your own business?
I do all my budgeting for my own business. I look at my bank accounts every single day, I literally, my planning is future based. So I think towards the future. It's not like, what do I need today? And then I just buy it. I think about what I need in the future. I save up for it, or I purchase it when it's the right time. So if you have patience when you purchase things, you're going to buy things on sale. You just wait till Black Friday because you don't specifically need it, but it's your next step. And if you can save hundreds, thousands of dollars by buying stuff on Black Friday, then do it.
Then do it. Yeah, it's being smart with your money is key when you're trying to start a business, because if you go into a business expecting everything to be cheap, you're gonna have a rude awakening. So it's definitely knowing when to buy stuff and knowing when to invest in your own business. At what point did you realize that your business was getting too big for just you and that you needed to bring on other people?
So I am now currently down to myself.
Okay.
In 2020, I did have 3 other DJs working for me, exclusively with DJ Mast Productions. Some companies hire people as a subcontractor who also subcontract for other companies, so they're really hiring them as if a construction contractor were to hire another plumber or another, carpenter or whatever. They're hiring DJs like that. But for me, my business, this stuff is front and center. So this isn't on the back end. It's not production only. So if I was doing lighting production, it's not hard to add another person to, the crew that's going to go. It's like, hey, we need more hands to lift things, to install things. But all of that gets checked. All of it gets finalized and installed. And so it doesn't really matter who's putting it in, so long as you're okay with them putting it in and they're not going to break your gear. But when you're hiring DJs, that's like a new CEO every DJ you hire. You're literally hiring the face of your company to go out, because if I'm operating another event, it's not me who's at their event. They're the one who's there. They're the ones emceeing, talking on the mic. They're the ones choosing the music. They're the ones working with the client. And so every single one of those is extremely important. In 2020, all 3 of those got out of DJing just by coincidence within that year. The one got out of DJing just altogether. He retired from DJing. Then the other guy, he and his family paid off a bunch of bills. He has 4 kids with his wife, and they wanted more time together, because he was working another full-time job while also doing, 45 events a year for me. And so if you consider 52 weeks out of the year, you've got 52 weekends out of the year. He was working 45 out of those 52 weekends plus 5 days during the week. So he was working a lot with 4 kids. What they did with us helped them to pay off some of those bills, which is awesome. And I was like, I am all for family. And so I encouraged that. It was a total bummer to lose him. But it was awesome for him and to be a part of that step as well, to be able to get to that point. And then the other DJ had another job as well. And he was working a decent number of weekends for me, but he got a remote allowance. This is all due to COVID and what COVID brought with a lot of corporate clients, or I shouldn't say corporate clients, but corporations,
Right.
How they operated with, work from home statuses and things like that. He was allowed for full remote allowance. And so him and his wife moved to South America on a U.S. budget and worked for the company that he still works for now down in South America. So all 3 of them got out of DJing, which brought it back down to myself. But my wife and I have 2 children, and the stress of managing and running the business, sales and all of that, contract creation, because I still do all my admin stuff. I had not yet at that time hired somebody for admin stuff. And so the admin was still on me. I was still doing 100 events a year. They were doing, 45 or whatever it was themselves. And so I was very busy. And with 2 children now, 2 children are very different than 1 children. Anybody who has kids, they know what it feels like to then have 2 people that you have to watch out for. And so just giving more time into their development. For me, life really honestly is about, I want to work so that I can spend the time doing, I love what I do, which is awesome. So it feels less like work, but I also have other passions that I like to do. And family is a passion of mine as well. And so working is to provide for family. I would still DJ if I didn't need to make money doing it. I would still DJ, but I wouldn't DJ nearly as much as I am. That's out of provision, and that's to work, and that's to grow the business and to continue being strong. And so my motivations are to grow the business, but it's also to provide for my family, and that is an emotional thing too. So the business needs to provide financially, and then provide enough time for me to provide emotionally for my family. And so wherever we're at, and the family is going to change that a little bit too, and how much I can put in. Right now, I'm still doing 100 events a year, but at a certain point, maybe I'll take a month off or something like that to spend specific time with my family and to do a vacation, essentially just regroup, re-energize and come back into it strong. I've never taken a vacation since I went full time. I've taken vacations, but I've never really set work entirely aside. And I still can't really do that as an admin and as a business owner, but I can lower my schedule during like a vacation time. So yeah.
So are you looking for more people? Is that
so? Hey man, LBC, we are here. If it is the right fit for you to be a part of DJ Mast Productions, you can absolutely reach out. Contact at djmast.com is an email address you can utilize. You can even utilize our contact form if you forget that email address on our website, djmast.com. Feel free to reach out if Facebook, for whatever reason, is your preference. But I'd love to chat with you. Right now, if we were to look for somebody, it would be somebody turnkey, if you will, somebody who I can train to be a DJ, MC, and set up all of their own gear. I say their own gear. We provide you the gear. We provide you the trailer, all of the resources that you need to succeed, but you are the one operating. You're the one setting it up. And so if that sounds like something you're interested in, I would be happy to chat with you and see if it's the right fit for you. And then over time, we find if it's the right fit for us. I really try to give true and pure expectations on what to expect, availability-wise, effort-wise, amount of hours that you're putting in, not just like the physical effort you're putting in, but the amount of hours you'll put in per event, and what to expect on sales meetings and things like that. And I want to give you the ability to understand what you're getting into before we take a further step into it to make sure it's the same correct fit for both of us.
Cool, man. So I'm curious, how did you ever set rates for yourself? Because that's something as musicians that we really need to pay attention to. Because if you lowball yourself, you're not going to get as much business. But if you highball yourself, you're still not going to get as much business. Because it's, as a musician, I've had this conversation with so many people that if my rate is like 25 per hour, people are going to be like, really? Only 25? How good is he? How have you worked through that? How have you decided that? What goes into deciding that?
So understanding your market is really important to understand where your pricing should be. If you are just starting as a business, some people say, like, know your worth, know your value, charge that right away. But if you're trying to build clientele, if you're trying to build influence in your market, the more events you're DJing, the more people you see. So any given event that I'm DJing in the special event industry, there's going to be on average 150 people per event. So if I'm DJing 100 events a year, that's 100 times 150. That's 15,000 people a year that I see just through, interaction as a DJ. And so the more events you can do, the more you do get out there. I would say if you're playing bars or if you're playing, however you're getting your live gigs, if you're doing stuff for, say government type events where they're doing, maybe a public event in a park or something like that, or a food truck festival or something like that set up by a local ordinance or something like that, that's a little different. But if you're trying to get out there, your rate is really what gets you in the door. And my first time I DJ'd, I literally told him, this is a tryout. If you like it, let me know if you want to move forward and work more together. But I was willing to give them that for free. So it was one night to DJ for free. Now, I'm not saying like you go around and do, all these, restaurants for that type of scenario. But once you've gotten enough experience, you can at least reference that experience. You have knowledge of that, and you're going to come in more professional. Once you're coming in more professional, you can charge more for professional services. And so the way I've chosen my pricing, I started, and this kind of goes along with like if you want to start a business, understand how you want to start the business. If you want to own a business and you want to start it and go full-time right off the bat, you are probably going to need a decent pocket of change all ready to start.
Yes.
whether you have had that from your previous business or whether you take a business loan. If you're taking a business loan or had a previous business and you give that effort into it and you make it, awesome. If it's a loan, worst case scenario, that money you've put into things, you're paying your interest on that, and that's a cost. But hopefully wherever you've put that money wasn't in directly expendable items that are just gone. You can either resell items or you can utilize those items yourself in the future. But if you want to start strong in a market, really getting out there, having conversations with restaurants, having conversations specifically for me in the event industry, having conversations with venues. I went more so on the slow, have strong market penetration, and just be known first for quality before pricing. I always wanted to be of good value for what we offer anywhere on the board. And so I started a little slower. I would take what came in. I would get referrals from that. So my circle was small at first. Friends and family are a lot of those referrals. And this goes for almost any business you do. Friends and family are really what starts to get your name out there to their friends and families. Mm-hmm. And then as you start to do more, especially in the public sector or like in the special event sector where other people are watching you, they're going to see you, and then they start to spread the word. If you're already DJing at a venue, my goal was I never had a conversation about a preferred vendors list with any venue until they brought it up to me. I wanted to at least have a conversation and a relationship with them before I started to do that. But if you want to start a business right off the bat, so long as you come into the conversation right, and so long as you know your business well, you can have those conversations earlier on than I chose to have. But what it did do is it allowed a very strong, deeply rooted business within Lancaster County and the surrounding areas. So I don't find myself traveling out as often because there's enough outsourcing, there's enough venues in the area and we outsource clients to our area. Or we bring in clientele from other areas. So like Jersey, Maryland, Delaware, New York, they're coming to Lancaster County because we have venues that meet their medium to top tier grade venues at a price that are their medium to low end venues. Because their price points are so much higher for venues. Our price points in some areas are reaching those price points, but we still have a huge number of venues that have been built, created specifically for special events. So we import a decent amount of weddings. So there's a lot in this area. I do DJ Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, West Virginia, New York and stuff like that. But the majority of our events are within, I would say, Lancaster County, York County, Harrisburg, and Hershey. That's where,
that's where it's at.
Yeah. That's at least 80% of our jobs are within York, Harrisburg, Hershey, and Lancaster.
Yeah, so especially being a DJ, the relationship is key between the venues and the clientele because that's literally your business is the relationship because they're not gonna. I know so many people. My own aunt remembers her DJ for playing not the music that she wanted. What she wanted was all Eagles, and what he did was he was like, oh well. No, excuse me. Sorry. She wanted Journey, and the DJ said, "Oh, well, Eagles sound close to Journey," so they only played Eagles the entire time.
The entire time.
The entire time.
That was an easy job.
I know.
They were told to play one band, so there's nothing you can do to go outside of that. So that would have been you had one job, literally one. You had one job in that case, and that was just to play Journey.
Yeah.
So that's where paying attention to your client matters. See their vision, hear their vision, and also just understand the crowd and then reading it, checking in with the client throughout. Relationship, you're right, is key. Relationship with vendors is key. So as a DJ or as a photographer, videographer, even caterers, absolutely, if you are a coordinator or a planner, and then the venue as well. Venues can sometimes be a little more offset from the actual event day, depending on how much they allow the event to just happen without interaction. Caterers can sort of be on the back end, but you still have a good quality of service. Most events we do have bars, so that's where you have bartenders who have conversations with clients regularly. Hire the right staff for that. Don't put somebody who's a better server, good at putting out food and good at, seeing things on tables that need to be done. Don't put them on the bar if they don't have that ability to have a conversation, have a good personality with that. So personality matters a ton. And personality matters if you think about even in the trades, construction as well. If somebody comes in, they look professional, they put booties on their feet before they walk into your house instead of walking in with their boots right onto your carpet, there is a huge difference. Yes. As soon as you see that respect, that starts to build trust. And so respecting venues, because I had a construction background, I come with that perspective. I'm pushing large gear through doors, standard doors. Not all doors are 36-inch doors or larger. Some are just a standard man door, and you have to be able to get through these doors without damaging anything, period. And so just understanding, how do you respect a venue space? How do you then also respect the authority that a planner has throughout the day? What can you do to emphasize or to enforce what they want? How do you facilitate what timeline they've created throughout the day? And then for photographers and videographers, sometimes they're shooting details elsewhere. They're not always in the room, and they don't have somebody, they're not always nobody's really hiring somebody to sit in the room and say, radio them in and say, hey, they need you in the room. You don't have somebody dedicated for that. And so just as a DJ, don't start an event before the people who are in the room who need to capture it are in the room. Because if you're finding them after you've already announced the event, then they're running in, scrambling, setting up lights if they need to for a specific area, if it's cake cutting or special dances, that type of thing.
Yeah, and on the inverse, if there's ever a moment that happens, for example, I was at a wedding and we just happened to play an older song because a lot of the younger crowd had gone outside to do drinks or whatever, and so it was a bunch of the older crowd left just eating and talking. So we put on a Frank Sinatra song, a slow dance. And we got a lot of the elder couples, like the older family, dancing together, and the photographer just didn't happen to be there, and that's not really a regular planned event, but that was the only time that they were out to dance. So what I did was I decided, I'll take some pictures because I know the bride and groom are really going to appreciate having those memories being photographed.
Yeah,
and just it's going the extra step really. With DJing, I used to get the bride and groom whatever drink they wanted. I used to go around and ask them specifically if they wanted a song being played or whatever. Just white glove stuff like that puts you apart from the rest.
It does. It makes an impression. If you go down through our reviews, I've offered drinks to brides and grooms before, and it's made it into the reviews, meaning that it matters. It made an impression. And so doing what you can do to make the event a success is so important. And realizing that sometimes that means stepping out of what your typical job description is. To the DJs that just stay behind the booth, they're better fit for the clubs because you don't have to get out of your booth. You don't have to facilitate things as much. But they're still encouraging drink sales. They're still encouraging the other things that they're doing. And if there is anything special, they're kind of like letting you know about that. If there's anything unique that's about to happen, any special presentation, any special act that's going to happen at a club or whatever. But yeah, going that extra mile, working with the other vendors, being willing to help however you can, and just adjust yourself a little bit if you need to make it work for them.
Yeah, even if there's one person out on the dance floor, what I did is I went out there and danced with them just to make sure that because if you're the only one dancing on the dance floor, it's a little awkward. So I was like, what, I'll go out there and dance with them, and we had a really fun time, and that was one of the things that the bride and groom commented on. It's like, yeah, dude, my aunt really just loved the fact that you went out there and danced with her, and that's just the moment that made their night. Wasn't even the fact that they got married. But they saw that their family was having and really enjoying themselves with the vendors.
Yeah, and you took a special leeway in that sense and you obviously did what was right for what was it a family that was it a family member that you knew of, or was it a direct friend, or how did you get that event?
Oh, that was through the company I was with.
Okay, cool.
So
okay.
I didn't even know these people, but I just noticed the situation and I was like, she's vibing out. and kind of looking around, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go out there and join her, and then we just have fun dancing together, and she was like, oh, that was so, I really, she was like an older woman too, so she
Yeah.
was just, I just needed that. And that was what made the night for her, for at least her, and the bride and groom commented on it.
Cool.
So it's doing stuff like that that you wouldn't really do all the time. It really sets yourself apart.
Yeah.
So we're kind of ending off our radio time here. So we'll keep going on Facebook Live. Where are some places that people can find you at?
Yeah, simply, guys, Facebook and Instagram are both DJ Mast Productions, DJ MAST Productions. The website is djmast.com. If you are looking to have a special event, whether it's a wedding, corporate event, party, or formal, you can contact us through our website. www.djmast.com/contact is the actual direct link. There's a link right there when you go to our main website as well. You can click that. It's simple to fill out your date, location that you're planning to have it, your name, and so forth. It's really simple. Instagram and Facebook. It'd be awesome if you guys want to follow and just to see event stuff. We do live posts, or I should say story posts on the weekends when we're actually performing events. And then you'll see stuff that I feel are better photos for actually posting on the wall. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, check out what we do. See the types of events that we do. We do some events with lots of lighting. We do some events with less lighting or no lighting at all. We do ceremonies, cocktail hours, and receptions. We do, and what I said, corporate events, private parties and things like that too. We get those in. Some, family reunions. We do some birthdays. We do some larger events in people's lives.
That's awesome. Well, with all that said, you can follow us on The Story podcast. You can follow us, just search up The Story Corey Rosen on all streaming platforms. That's CORYROSEN. You can also go to facebook.com/The Story Corey Rosen. On Instagram, the _story podcast. I gotta find a way to make everything one.
Instead of spaces, they're underscores.
Yeah, it's a little weird. But you can find us there. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to play a song of mine. It's called You Remain. It's a Christian song that I wrote about 2 years back, and when everything was shutting down during the pandemic, everything was fading away, everything was disappearing, and the only thing that really remained was God. And that's just a reminder to myself and everybody else that when all things fade away, it is God that remains. With all that said, this is You Remain by me. And that was my song, You Remain. If you want to listen to our conversation, we're going to keep going on the facebook.com/The Story Corey Rosen. And with all that said, we're going to get you guys back to the radio. Cool. So, you are also a man of faith.
Yep.
What is it like how does your faith influence your decisions you make, the music you play, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Because there's a lot of the music world can be very unchristlike.
Yeah, special events allow a much more specific clientele and is much more professional presentation than what some music avenues would allow you or expect of you. And so I've found that moving from the club industry into special events has allowed that to feel less, contradicting. And for me personally, it really, you can say you work construction, just keep bringing it back to that, but say you work really any job, say you're a police, say you're like whatever it is, police officer, you're going to be around a lot of people who are not Christians in a lot of those cases, and the environment, the conversations, the words used. Music is words and music. You have instruments and words. Mm-hmm. And at your place of work, you also have a bunch of words coming around. So how do those conversations affect you? How do you work within those, environments and still be, still feel not broken down? How do you feel that you're not being pressured negatively? And that does definitely have to do with your own personality, to be honest. Can you be confident in who you are in God and still be a part of these other environments that might not bring him into it all the time? And so, when I say conversations, they could be crude conversations. They could be explicit conversations. Music can be crude. It can be explicit. The environment that you're DJing in also visually is affected differently too. So being out of the club scene, where there might be go-go dancers and stuff like that, being out of that is a better, and it's the environment that I would show my kids at a special event is a crowd that is there to have a great time. And it's a little different than the crowd that would show up to a club or to a bar or whatever, wherever you'd be playing your music. And so that environment itself, I feel that the environment you surround yourself in, how visually, affecting it is to you matters. Also, can you be around other people who are cursing? If you don't curse as a Christian, can you be around people who are cursing and still not curse? Mm-hmm. Do you feel the pressure to do so? Do you feel, and that pressure is enough of a reason to want another job, because you're constantly feeling like you don't fit. You constantly, if that's how you feel. If you're not feeling that way, if you are who you are and you maintain who you are, who you believe you should be, and who you believe God wants you to be, then you can still remain in areas like that, not let it affect you, and in fact be a better effect to other people. And so I do personally play what the client wants. It doesn't necessarily, and many times, it doesn't actually reflect my beliefs, but the music is fantastic, The music is danceable. It's a lot of fun. But even stuff that isn't danceable, that sounds, take yourself into some smooth stuff, you know what I mean? Or R&B, the lyrics, even though it sounds like a more listenable, in our Lancaster County culture area, something somebody could hear musically and they're like, oh, that sounds nice. Mm-hmm. I was in a hardcore band, and we didn't talk about that earlier, but I was a drummer in a hardcore band. We were a Christian hardcore band. Well, hardcore doesn't mean you're demon,
right, yes.
like you're devil worshipers, it doesn't mean like you're bringing in demons to this place. In fact, we were exactly the opposite, and our lyrics reflected that. The way we acted Off stage reflected that, and at home reflected that too. So the style of music, some people could consider offensive. And that didn't even have to do with the lyrics. The lyrics of music, some people could consider offensive, and the style isn't even offensive to them, but the lyrics are. So it just depends on where you're at in your confidence, to be honest. I'm not saying that for everybody it would be okay to play that music, and I don't play some of the music that I play to adults to my children at home.
Of course.
Absolutely. As a as a professional company, also the majority of events that we do are going to be they're going to have a professional demeanor to them, meaning that if it's an overly explicit song, it just might not be the right fit.
Right.
And so it is up to the client, to choose what kind of an environment they want, and we will do our best to give them that environment. But if it's outside of something that, like if right off the bat, they're like, hey, we want this and this at our event. And I don't just mean music, but I've heard of events that have had, like weddings, that have had things that have been like demeaning to individuals, like high-end weddings. Obviously, they could be low-end weddings too, but they were bringing in like an actual circus with certain depictions that were not encouraging to see, and it wasn't supportive of all individuals to see. And so I didn't DJ that event. I heard about it through somebody who did the audio production for the event. But those types of things can happen too. And so if that was like, if they're like, this is our vision, and I'm like, that really doesn't fit our goal as a company. It doesn't fit the professional, approach that we like as a company. If somebody from the outside came to this event, how would they feel? We can say no. And that's the cool thing about being a business owner. You're not told what to do unless you've consented to that.
Yeah.
If you take the client on, you're accepting to be told what to do. But if you don't like what you're seeing with that client, and even if you feel it's not the right fit, once you get more into limiting your, with supply and demand, you only have so much you can supply. For any given size of company, there's only so much you can supply. If your demand is higher than what you can supply, you can either supply more and fulfill all demand, or you can supply a little less and figure out what demand you want to fulfill. So what clients do you want to work with? What type of work do you want to do? And I would say other individuals in the arts within special events, so photographers and videographers, they very much choose many times who they want to work with. And if somebody's coming in and they came to them because they were referred to them versus they saw their work and they were like, we love your work, we want you to do our wedding, or we want you to shoot our corporate event because we love the vision you have, and how you make that come out. Like videographers have a little bit more in message than what a photographer does within a single image. You can give a message within many images, but a videographer gives you the ability to actually, tell a short story. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure your faith influences the way you treat your clientele and your venues as well.
It should. Yeah, it should. To be consistent, absolutely. I don't necessarily, let your faith and let your actions speak for you, because that's what people see. That's what builds relationship too, and relationship is what builds respect, and respect is what builds the ability to have a conversation with somebody about things that might be a little bit contradictory to them or how they're living their life. I'm not saying that you try to create a relationship with somebody so that you can actually preach to them or teach them something verbally, but even through your action, if you create a relationship with somebody, that respect draws them to you. Respect draws somebody to somebody, right? Like, and this is not from any specific reading that I've done or anything. It's just applicable. If you respect somebody, you like being with them, and most likely, if you can apply it to your life, you wouldn't mind being more like them.
Right. It's the way that you interact with people that shows the love of Christ anyway, because you're being influenced by the Bible, and they're gonna see that you're being influenced by your faith, and that's gonna make you who you are. If that's gonna draw them to you, then that just opens the door for you know better relationship, better life, better community with each other.
Yeah, entirely. And that was the same when I was in a band as a drummer. We were in an industry, hardcore. Like in this case, cool thing is hardcore kind of became creative and was continued to be creative through Christian bands, as creative as non-Christian bands are. If you guys listen to a lot of music, you do typically see the secular industry coming in with the creativity first, and then the Christian, copy, if you will. Yeah, you start to see like wherever the music is moving, it's the secular world that's really bringing that first experience. But hardcore was honestly like it. They both came in at the same time. I mean, and some of the OGs, some of the older classics of hardcore, if you will, like Living Sacrifice and Zayo were expressly, Christian bands. And that's like towards the beginning of, I would say coming out of like the ska punk stuff, going into the harder rock, harder than hardcore, right? Mm-hmm. And so we as a band, we were respected by our performance. And that's typically the way you are respected as a band or as a vocalist. You are respected by your skill, and then that brings obviously their interest to you, but then it also brings conversations. So we could meet with people immediately at the end of an event, at the end of a show, as a band, and like the conversations we would have with people would have never happened if we didn't actually have, if we didn't build the respect through our performance. So your action really matters. Me as a DJ and so forth.
So what was it like to tour as that band? What was it like to were you? I assume that you weren't maybe the leader or the facilitator of the band, but what was it like to join and make music as a hardcore Christian band?
So, yeah, I was in the band from the very beginning, but I wasn't the front man. I wasn't the vocalist, and people typically see the vocalist as the front person unless you're somebody who has an extraordinary set of skills and you really, like, shine in the back as a drummer, for instance.
Like Phil Collins.
Yeah, exactly. There's other hardcore bands also that have had drummers be sort of like a primary face of the of the band as well, or the company. It's both. And so you're like, for me, I was the drummer. The drummers understand what it takes to lift and carry and organize, because you have more gear than the rest. Hardcore stuff, we were doing full stacks. So, each guitarist would have a full stack. And my parents, this was end of high school. This was like junior, senior year of high school, a year after high school, and then going into my first year of college, was when I was a part of the band. And so my parents were the ones that owned the van. We practiced in my parents' basement. And so because of all of that, if it was in my friend's basement and I kept like a set of drums there, most likely there would be them doing a little bit more work. But I did a lot of the organization of like the setup, tear down, and again, I'm an organized individual, and so that kind of worked out. But it also, the drummers tend to do a lot of the lifting.
I'm sure that really set you up for your DJ experience.
It really did, yeah. When I'm lifting 18-inch woofers in, 3-way mains with 15-inch bottoms, the mixers themselves aren't light, flight cases, racks, yeah.
Right. So what kind of tours did you do? Where did you guys go?
So the majority of what we did, honestly, were in the Lancaster, the Reading, the Harrisburg areas. We had a super strong scene here, and a few larger bands came out of our area. But we would, the tour that we did, the longer tour that we did, we started in Ohio, so we kind of did like a Northeast tour. So I don't know if we did anything on the way out to Ohio, but we did things all the way on the way back from Ohio. So we went out to Ohio, we came back through PA, we went up into New York, up into Maine, we went all the way up to Maine, and then back down through. So it was like a very northeast, section of the U.S. But but we were doing that with other bands as well. We would kind of show up. We wouldn't necessarily always caravan together. We wouldn't necessarily always, sleep in the same parking lot together, and stuff like that. But we would show up and we would be doing the same shows together, and it was an absolute blast. If you ever have this is for you listening. If you ever have the opportunity to be in a band and get shows, do it. If you have the time to do it, especially if you're younger, do it. It was literally some of the best years of my life.
And you're going to get invaluable experience and invaluable just people to know if you go on tour, especially. Because those are people that you probably will have never, ever met if you hadn't gone on tour, right?
Never. Yeah.
Never. And some of these connections that you make, like some of the connections that I made when I went on my road trip around the U.S., have really come through. Like, really come through. Now, next road trip I'm going to hit Nashville again. I'm going to be hanging out with some really cool people because of some of the connections that not only that I made through doing this, but through the last time I went through. It's amazing how many people you can meet if you're just in a band, first off. Because people are going to be like, wow, I love you, and this is awesome. You should come over to this place and hang out with these people. And it just, networking is so important for a band.
Yeah. Networking is everything for a band, especially if you're trying to make money doing it.
Exactly.
I mean, if you're just playing out for fun, you can really do whatever you want, wherever you want, and you're just having fun. And that's awesome, too. So enjoy it if that's your thing. But if you want to make it a career, just like I talked about starting a business, you need to meet people. You need to, put things out there. You need to put yourself out there. You need to be found. Social media is not all of that. Back when I was in a band, there was MySpace and Zanga. Half the people listening, half the people listening don't even know Zanga. That was like a blog, if you will. That was kind of the first social media. It was a blog where you could comment, you could give e-props, which were likes. You could customize your page. It was like, and then MySpace came out, and then MySpace came out for bands. We were doing, I think it was called Pure Volume, almost positive that's what it was. Pure Volume was like a band-specific like social media thing, so you could create your own Pure Volume account. And so we as a band did that, and that's literally how people would listen to our music. Most people weren't necessarily buying a CD right off the bat,
right?
And we weren't recording right off the bat. We made music. We'd play music live, but we never played music to be recorded at the start. And then because you have to afford that, like you have to pay for a producer to do that, you have to pay for studio time. And so we, first off, we were all relatively young and no parents were putting money into the band. And none of us had some random job that had an absolute, lucrative, money pit that was just pumping it into us. And so we were just trying to make money through merch at the start of things. And then we started recording. And then once you did record, you could put that up on Pure Volume, then MySpace, then, yeah.
And so that was like 5 years, you said?
That was for like 4 years that we did. Yeah, that we did. And this, by the way, would have been back, because I graduated high school in 2006. Okay. So this would have been like 2005, 2006, 2007, and 2008.
So did it just like fall apart, or did you guys just like, all right, we're going to do something different now? Or?
That was just where, I had to put the effort into either the band or college when I was mentioning that earlier. Gotcha. And so, college, I went to Penn State. So I've got to study for that stuff. Weekends really are big homework or paper weekends, and I was working jobs throughout the time as well. And so finding the time to actually gig, do shows, practice with the band. We would do that at least once a week, and that was hours long. And so putting that a part of it just took too much away from college. So for me, I knew that it was either one or the other. You can make college work. To those of you who are trying to do, considering being in a band and going to college, especially if you're going for music.
Right.
But if you're not going for music, you can definitely make a band thing work. You just have to. That has to be where you put all of your extra effort. So if you wanted to socialize with anybody else, you can't. It's with the band. You're hanging out with the band. You're practicing with the band. You're gigging with the band, and then you're writing your papers. You're going to college. You're going to your classes. I did a heavier course load as well. I don't think I ever did one semester I think I did less than 18 credits, but I think everything else was like 18 plus. So
that's impressive. That's what it was like for me here. 18 plus credits. It's astounding how little time you actually have in college. Going back to it's kind of like generic questions now, but one interesting thing that we had talked about on our pre-call was your last name and how that has given you some opportunity, strangely enough.
Yeah, it's given some unique opportunity. So I tried to choose a name, which DJ Mast Productions, Mast is my actual last name. It took me literally about like 2-3 months to figure out, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to go with. Because I was going through other DJ names, and there was a ton of DJs with any given like super cool DJ name. There was like a bunch of DJs that had it already. Unless you were like a superstar DJ, had your name trademarked, and nobody else can utilize it. There's a lot of DJs in other areas. So you might, if you're a small DJ and you're doing bars and stuff like that, pick out whatever name you want, and you should be fine so long as nobody in the immediate area has it. Right. But if you want to start doing more events and you want to start branching out other than, your little watering hole, if you will, of bars and restaurants and stuff like that, then you want to make sure that your name transcends a decent amount of things. One thing I was not checking was the translation of Mast, M-A-S-T, into like every language, right? Like I didn't look at the translation because I wasn't expecting to do any other language events when I first started. So it means something in Hindi. Actually, it actually means like, well, so some places it's like somebody who's fun, and some places it's like somebody who got drunk. And so I've had a few laughs with like some clients and some of them, like, they have no problem apparently booking me as DJ Mast. But it made a good like icebreaker, if you will, between their wedding party and me. And I think there's a DJ Mast that I can't actually find. I haven't looked too hard, but he's in California. There's also one out in, I think he's French. And so he's over in Europe. He does more of the club scene. And he's actually pretty strong in the club scene. I don't know if he still is or not. I haven't looked it up much because I'm not changing my name anytime soon. But so there's like 2 other DJs. The one is in Europe. I'm not even worried about him because he's doing clubs and stuff like that. He's doing festivals. And then the other one is, in California. But I do get calls because there's a Lancaster, California. There's a Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So I get calls just because they might type, DJ Mast in Lancaster, for instance. Right. Or somewhere California, Lancaster, California, it still would hold for search stuff. It would still kind of create a stronger search. So I'll get calls, and I do, anybody who wants to hire me, it doesn't matter the genre that I'm DJing, the skill of DJing transcends the different cultures and genres. But you have to understand, that culture to play the music that they want. So doing your research ahead of time, the first Indian wedding I did a lot of research on. And giving your client the ability to give you, and a lot of what I do now, if it is an Indian wedding, usually it's not Indian on both sides. Usually it's a mixed wedding. And if it is an all Indian wedding on both sides, usually the bride and groom are relatively like U.S. and cultured, and yet they want to bring in their cultures more as well. So that can go, into the Spanish, Latin market. That can go into like all sorts of different genres, all sorts of different backgrounds. You apply the same thing. You want to bring in some of the classics for the older crowd, and some of the newer stuff, maybe from that same, from their area. So, playing Bollywood stuff, whatever their pop stuff is now too. And just understanding the client, getting some of those specific suggestions if they have a parent or an aunt and uncle or somebody who's older who really wants it. Just say, hey, include their requests in it if you like them as well. And that way I can make sure that I have it, because some tracks are literally not even accessible through iTunes or Amazon.
Or Spotify even.
Or even Spotify. And so some people, depending on their culture, some people actually just listen to YouTube all day long. They'll listen to YouTube playlists of Indian music or something, else where their music is specifically just on YouTube, because that's a worldwide thing.
Right.
But Spotify, I'm assuming, has certain licensing for the U.S. versus elsewhere, and Amazon and
Right,
iTunes or
more
Apple Music.
American than not.
Yeah.
So, what are maybe some of the bigger mistakes that maybe you or you've seen other people make, and what's some advice to get around that, or what are some things that we can avoid for future DJs or future business owners?
So I started being a DJ because I saw the certain needs to make a difference, to be different than those other DJs, play the music that the client wants, have the attitude that the client is looking for. Don't make it about you unless the client somehow genuinely wants it to be more about the DJ than about them.
Right.
And so I saw those needs right off the bat. I would hear people talk about how DJs at this wedding or this special event just like played nothing for the crowd that they wanted. And so I'm like, that's like your first thing. Like, understand.
That's your job.
Yeah, understand your client and play what they want. And again, that goes across all different types of DJs. That goes for your type. Like, when you switch genres as a band, you lose following.
Yes.
Like, when you don't play what the club wants, they get the wrong people, and you lose clients. When you don't play for special events, you lose. When you don't play what they want for special events, you lose clients. And so that was the number one thing: focusing specifically on your client, play what they want, have a professional understanding. Like, be a professional, know what you're playing, know your music well, but play what they want. And if you think it's going to go one way better than another way, and it's not in the specific area that the bride and groom or the corporate client is had requested, approach them and just say, hey, I think this is going to work really well with the crowd. Are you okay? Whether requests have come in or whether you just have your intuition that it's going to work better this way. Is it okay if I try this out? And if it works really well, are you okay if I continue with that for a little while? And literally touching base with them throughout the night. And that's all you have to do for that. Equipment is key. That should come as a standard. Being a DJ, you should come with good gear as a standard. If you are coming with lower quality gear, if you're coming with half the tools to a construction job because you don't have the money or you didn't want to put the money in to get the other tools, it's going to take you twice as long. You're going to be less efficient. It's going to not be done nearly as clean.
And give you a bad rap.
You're going to see that throughout the DJ situation as well. If it's not good audio, you're going to hear bad audio. If it's not good equipment, either you're not going to have the tools to do what you need to do. If you didn't bring enough equipment, you're not going to have the tools you need to do what you need to do. So, bring the right number of microphones.
Yes.
And so, this is to anybody who's, considering going into DJing and not working for DJ Mast Productions. Bring more than one microphone, because otherwise you're making your announcements, you're making all of your MC facilitating stuff, and then you're either handing somebody your microphone to do it, or they're actually having to walk over to your booth because you don't even have a wireless microphone yet.
Yeah.
And so those types of things, bring the gear that you should bring. It's going to take effort. Speakers, audio, like, you can't go loud without going heavy yet. It's going to be heavy. Even if it's small and it's extremely loud, it's going to be heavy. And so your quality is going to mean effort. Loading in is going to take effort. Understand how to load in. Again, taking care of the venue space and not screwing anything up. Don't scratch floors. Don't slide things around. Don't hit door jams. Don't hit chandeliers with tables, poles. Trust me. I've seen it.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen it happen. As you're lifting tables, anything that goes above your head, watch what's above your head. If it's a drop ceiling, you could knock out the panels. But if it's drywall, you could nick that. If it's a chandelier and it's super expensive, you could break that.
Yeah.
Just things like that. If you're bringing in trussing, make sure you understand where you're putting it. Look ahead, look up when you're, moving it and stuff like that. And when you put things down, base plates, they're all metal. If you're not putting rubber on the bottom of your base plates, don't slide them. Don't adjust them without lifting them, ever. Speakers, even on the floor, lift them before you adjust them. You could either leave a black streak on a floor. Yes, you can typically rub that off if it's rubber. But you could also have a stone that you didn't know was underneath your subwoofer, and you're dragging your subwoofer across the floor thinking it's just rubber feet. Well, that stone just scored the entire floor, and now and this is where your insurance comes in.
Yeah, right. This is why you LLC.
So be insured. You can insure also as a sole proprietorship. You can insure anywhere in that realm. The insurance of an LLC is beyond your insurance. The assurance of an LLC is beyond your insurance, I should say. So it separates your personal life with your business. But then you also have to understand how to run your business too. Make sure you keep enough money in the business to run it and to handle any issues that come up. Because if you are just transferring all your money directly into your personal account and you have no money to handle any issues that might arise, then that's where legally they can start to pierce that corporate veil a little bit more, because it's like, look, they're not operating as a separate entity. They're operating as an individual, but they have a separate entity name.
Right.
And then if there's enough reason for negligence and so forth, you can break through an LLC to go after an individual.
And that's where it gets dicey.
Yeah.
Very quickly.
So again, do things professionally. Be professional and think ahead about stuff. That when I'm talking about like speakers are heavier, if you want a full range speaker, it's going to be bigger than your small, at least across your full spectrum of decibel projection. So like at certain loudnesses, you want full range as much as possible. Certain speakers will get louder, but you're not going to get a full range once you get louder. And that's to protect the speaker because it can't handle it. And so, that's for me. I've always wanted quality to come first. And so you get 18-inch subwoofers and three-way mains at your baseline package. That's for parties, corporate events, weddings, formals. And then ceremonies, we run an advanced feedback suppressor in the background. I'll actually, I'm sitting there and EQing everybody. I have many multiple mics. Many multiples. I have multiple mics, and I don't just like mean 2 or 3. I can bring in more than that if I need to. If I need to mic up a band, I can do that. I have the inputs available for that. Wow. And again, and then understanding where audio is best heard. That's your ears are designed to hear forward. If you can, if at all possible, putting the speakers where people are looking for ceremonies, for speaking engagements in general. Speakers project from up front towards your ears, and then it broadens the speaker. Even if it's a small room, it still broadens your speaker's voice so that volume doesn't need to be as high at any one individual area. It broadens it. It gives the clarity the same for those who are in the back as those who are already in the front and hearing it much more close.
I'm just saying, having worked at a different DJ company, you do a lot more than what we did. And this,
I do.
Yeah. So it definitely, if you want a cool experience, definitely check out Mr. DJ Mast. I have a few more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. What is one thing that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started your business?
So when I was talking about, if you're going to start a business and kind of how you want to get things started, if I knew I wanted to start a business, and it does come from some security, like to go out and do something comes from the security of either knowing your skill, that you have a market because of your skill, or it comes from the security of a financial, net that you have. So you have financial security to give yourself time to figure those things out. That being said, getting immediately out of college doesn't necessarily give you a ton of security. You might have that security in your skill, and hopefully that is the case. If you are confident in your own personality, that's cool, and that will help you very much. But also understand you don't have a whole lot at risk, so you don't need much to be secure for. So if you're younger, it's easy to get into something new.
Yes.
If you have a family, it's very different because you're actually providing for the livelihood of your family. And if that changes, it changes everything in your whole life. So your schedule changes. If you have to end up taking an employment job, as an employee versus running a company, you're going to then have completely different hours in most cases, unless you're in the same industry that you were in. You're you're going to have like different hours. You're going to have different expectations. You are no longer in charge of your own schedule. You can't choose things yourself. It's your employer who chooses those. So that would then change your family's lifestyle. So give yourself some type of confidence and security to go into it, and then go into it all out. Become a professional as fast as possible. Don't try to enter into an industry where you want to give people advice and you don't have any real warrant to give that advice.
Right. That was something I had to do in order to start the podcast, because I didn't know what to do to how to start a podcast. I didn't know how to facilitate something. A lot of this was just a bunch of winging it, quote unquote. But I had done DJing, so I figured, okay, maybe a pre-interview call would be smart, because that's what you do with your wedding people. You always call the bride and groom several times, most likely, in order to set the date, make sure people know what's going on, and double check your list, check it twice.
Yep.
Make sure everything is naughty or nice.
He's making jokes out
making
here.
Jokes. And making sure that you have the ability to give your audience what they desire. Knowing your audience is so important.
Yep.
If you don't know your audience, what are you doing?
Yeah. Yeah, know your audience. If you want to go into finance, like finance is a thing where a lot of people, they want to sell, financial packages, planning, whatever it is. That's something you can get into. If you want to get into real estate, these are some of the things that are easy to get into and aren't easy to perfectly master. I shouldn't even say perfectly, or to grow well and to grow to grow both in skill and offerings.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want to be a realtor, if you want to be in finance, know the stuff inside and out. Don't just go to their classes and give the spiel that they, teach to you just in those classes to sell, because that will sell to the average person. But to somebody who wants to just come, not just once, so somebody who wants to come and get something done right, it's somebody who wants to come and who's going to be loyal to whoever is best.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe loyalty isn't even a great option, because this is who I am. I'm loyal to my friends, but if another company offers a better service or product, I'm going to purchase it. I don't need something because it's a brand name. I need it because it's what I need, and it's going to fulfill it well. And so if somebody else comes out with something, so if I'm using one brand now and somebody makes something better, man, I'm making the switch, and I have no regrets whatsoever. Some people are brand, loyal.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are, and that's what advertising does. That's what, that stuff is to create brand loyalty, without even, it's to educate a little bit, but it's really just being front of mind, and those people just go for what they recognize. So do what you do really well, understand it well, understand the conversations you have with people. If you don't have the answer, don't just get somebody to get the answer, get it yourself from whoever can give you an answer. If you need somebody to teach you, learn it yourself.
All right, so
yeah,
no, that's good. What is the worst or best thing, funniest thing that ever happened to you on a show?
So honestly, this is probably the worst that I would ever consider happening. This was back when I had started, and I had just gotten a ceremony rig, and it was a 2.4 gigahertz rig, which is, to those listening, it was a Wi-Fi mic system versus a UHF, a radio frequency mic system. And that Wi-Fi mic system, to those who don't understand, digital transfers versus radio transfers, digital is a bunch of ones and zeros. If it doesn't complete the sequence of communication, it cuts out altogether.
Mm-hmm.
There's no fuzzy. There's no, there's no.
It's either it's there or it's not.
There's no warning. It's there or it's not. If it doesn't complete that sequence, the whole sequence goes blank, which means it's blank.
Mm-hmm.
UHF gives you,
wiggle room.
It gives you wiggle room. It gives you some difference in distance and stuff like that, that you can actually project. But what I did was I set my booth. So my speakers were still up front, left, and right, the way your ears are designed to hear. But my booth was in the back right corner, and I ran all my cables up front. What that meant was my receiver all my receivers were in the back right corner. And I've been told by videographers to this day, and this is why there's a demand for good DJs and a demand for good companies of DJs. DJs still just push through cutouts constantly for events. Videographers tell me that because they're the ones recording the feed out of these DJs. And it's not all DJs, but there's some that don't care about cutouts. To me, the crowd had stood up for a time of worship, which was a cappella, but they had some, introduction to it and stuff like that. And it cut out a couple times during like the instruction. And I'm a perfectionist, and if you're a perfectionist, you know what it feels like to feel like you failed something.
Yes.
I considered that a failure because it wasn't perfect, and it wasn't even like it didn't get the message through because it cut out. And so after that, I created a standard for myself. I knew where I was going to set up for reception, and I also invested in better better antennas to receive. And better microphones. They're not 2.4 gigahertz. I'm running Sennheisers. They also have 2.4 gigahertz options. Shure has 2.4 gigahertz options, and some of their top line are Wi-Fi options now. But for me, I've invested in Sennheiser, radio frequency ones, and so getting a unidirectional paddle antenna is so key to get that extra range that you need. So these antennas are stronger. And they are focused, so they don't try to pick up everywhere. They try to pick up a specific space that you're trying to actually receive from, which means it just boosts the signal and the clarity of that signal. And so investing in that, which they're not cheap, and you do have to set them up. I mean, you're looking, I don't know, they're like $250, $300 a piece for a paddle antenna. So, it's an investment, and to somebody who's like just starting or whatever, they're like, oh man, you don't need it if you're going to be close enough.
Right.
But you have to be close enough. If you're outside, you don't have a dome above you, the atmosphere, although we might have more whatever emissions going into our atmosphere, it's not a solid ceiling, and it sure is pretty high up. So you're losing a signal everywhere. If you consider exploding a paint bomb, okay, that paint is going to explode in a general radius. If you put a single piece of paper out, the amount of paint that you originally had in the bomb compared to the amount of paint you have on the paper is like, I mean, it's nominal.
Right.
What you have on the paper is not even close to the amount of paint that was exploded in that bomb. And that's what you're trying to do with an antenna, with a receiver for a microphone. The microphone's transmitting everywhere. You're receiving it from one small area. So if you can take a larger blade, or increase the size of your paper, you catch a lot more.
So last question.
Yeah.
As a Christian, what is worship to you?
Worship to me is praising God for who he is and what he's done. And that is the broadest way I can describe that. Worship isn't necessarily always music. Worship is your posture, your attitude towards God. Do you thank him? Because that's a way of worship. You can worship people with your people or God, with the way with the amount of attention you give them, with how you communicate to them, or how you listen to them, how you let them communicate to you. But yeah, worship in a dedicated, worship music situation. It's trying to take that music and allow it to clear your mind a little bit more so that you can be more focused on your conversation with God, your worship with God, and applying that to your life. The more I worship, the more I realize, like, I'm learning like so much with it, and I'm just down at the very bottom level of what I feel like I should be relationship wise with God. I want, to those who say God is like my friend, and I actually have memories. I have like a feeling of my past. Like, we have a relationship. We've built this. Like a forever friend, a friend that you grew up with. Like that type of person that you feel and you communicate and you do know. I want that relationship with God myself. And so I'm finding out what's my best scenario to have that. I have a lot going on in my head constantly with owning a business, with having 2 kids that are wild. And with having a relationship with my wife that I am working to grow. and deepen and make better. There's a lot going on. But to those of you guys who are listening, if I'm sure there's some people who go to LBC who aren't Christian as well. I mean, I know you're at a Bible college, but you don't need to be a Christian to go to a Bible college. Yeah,
well,
maybe they ask you to. Okay, they ask you to pledge some things, but it really is your heart that is like where is your relationship with God, and God sees your heart. So focusing that, no matter what you're doing in life, no matter how many mistakes you're making right now, it's where are you focused? Where do you look? So I'm trying to focus to God, and they say, there is only one path to God, and that is your focus. But your paths might look different.
Yes.
So you are all coming from different areas of the world. God's in one area. He's never changing. He is who he is. He is himself. And so you're going to create a different path to get to him, your destination, but you have to look at him to actually follow that path straight. You want to make your path as straight as you can with as little squiggles as possible, because the squiggles just take you away from him. They elongate your journey to a relationship with him. Yeah.
What a way to end it off on. A really deep one. I've had a lot of fun, man.
Thanks.
This has been great. So definitely check out Facebook, Instagram, DJ Mast Productions, and check him out on his website, djmast.com. How far out are you scheduled into?
We're in 2024 right now, but we're not heavily in 2024. So we've got tons of dates available that year, 2023. I'm only about half booked for the year, but it doesn't mean the primary dates. A lot of them are taken up. So I'm getting a lot of inquiries for dates that I don't have available.
Here's a question before one last question that I really wanted to ask and I forgot about. How do you manage the different seasons? Because there's like a wedding season and then there's a not wedding season. What do you do to bridge those gaps?
Depending on how busy you are, there's a wedding season and there's a booking season. Bookings, and this is the industry, it's awesome for weddings specifically. Even corporate events fall into their own seasons as well. Corporate events typically actually fall into the holiday parties and maybe a summer, company employee or client appreciation type day. During the winters, it's pretty much the holiday parties,
Gotcha.
Celebrations. But for weddings, I'm the busiest season I would say is like May through October.
October? Really?
Again, depending on how busy you are, I'm multiple events every weekend until the end of the year. And literally till the end of the year. The only Saturday I have off is Christmas Eve, and I have a client call here in about an hour for the day before Christmas Eve. Yeah.
Well, let's get you out of here. With all that said, please do check him out. He's awesome dude. Just hearing from him, he does a lot of stuff that as I or my previous DJ company did not do. So he's definitely got you on the mind. Check him out, djmast.com, DJ Mast Productions, Instagram, and Facebook. You can check us out if you really like this episode. Be sure to share with your friends. You can follow us at facebook.com/TheStoryCoyRosen. That's CoryRosen. Find us on Instagram. Find us on all streaming platforms. Just search The Story Coy Rosen. You can, if you really want to support us, you can buy our merchandise. We have stickers for sale, and we have a hoodie that has the logo on the front and the first 50 guests, including DJ Mast, on the back. With all that said,
all right, I'm gonna have to get a hoodie for that then.
Yeah. with all that said, please tune in tomorrow, and we're gonna have a dude called Justin Angelo. He is from Key West, a musician that's coming up, and I'm really excited to hear about what it's like down there. I'm sure it's hot and humid, and there's gators everywhere.
Hopefully not as much in Key West, but they got a lot of sharks. They might have gators inside. Do they have inland? That's another conversation.
That's another conversation. Yeah.
Gators.
With all that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.